first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity of being part of this elite group. Now, what I have also realized is that most of you are scientists, whereas I am a purely marketing person who has learned a little bit of science interacting with people like you all. So what I thought we would discuss is, it is taking a little bit from the first speaker, Dr. Ananta Ramakrishna, now Jimon and others, as to what we see, especially being part of several biodiversity groups and so on, what we see could add more value. Now, when we speak about value addition, we are always, under the impression we have to do something earth-shattering. Now, if you look at the definition of value addition, it just means that getting more value than what we spend to produce it. So in my mind and in my experience, there are several things that we actually do. So why do we need value addition? What is the need for this discussion at all? So one is that we want higher returns. It could be at the corporate, it could be at the farm level, it could be at the national level, looking at new markets and earning foreign exchange. And for a farmer, it could also be extending the market seasons that is available to her or him right now. And lately, it is also positive contribution to the community. Now, when you say value addition, we are typically talking about a commodity. So it can be corn, it can be rice, it can be spice, whatever. So if you link it to a piece of steak that is available in the restaurants, what we are saying is steak is just a piece of meat. Now, the way it sizzles when it is served to you is what makes it so special. And there, what is really, the first thing is the image. Second is, we know that if the fat is in a certain way of layering, it is better. So all these comes from having the information, the knowledge about it, the image, and the intangible benefit. We talk about, oh, the sizzle is so good, it makes me feel hungry and so on. So really speaking, value addition now is to look at how we decommoditize ourselves. So typically when we speak of value addition, we say we want cleaning, packaging, processing, grinding, extraction, and several endless ways. But is there a different way of looking at this value addition? That's what I'm going to discuss in the next 3 to 4 slides. So what really value addition can be split into 2 parts. One is the strategy to capture value, and the other is to create value. Now, there is nothing wrong in wanting a strategy to capture value or to create value. The difference being, most often when we speak about value addition, we talk about capturing value and moving upstream. We want to be in the retail space. We want to be in this space. Now, when it comes to creating value, it is part of what Jimon also mentioned. It is about differentiating our product. By differentiating our product and making it unique, it can be through processing, it can be through farming, it can be through a lot of different ways. We can actually create value so much so that the returns become higher. Now, for that, the first thing that we need to do is also to define our value proposition. Without defining our value proposition, be it the country, be it a company, be it the group of farmer producer organizations, we need to definitely define our value proposition. Now, here, what makes sense for us in these days is to obviously go for sustainable. It has to be inclusive, and it has to be it has to be service oriented. Now, when we talk about sustainable, always we look towards the farmers. Oh, we need to produce the crop in a particular manner. It has to be climate resilient. But with the pandemic, we have also, and some of the going on in other parts of the world, we have also realized that resilience has to be cultural, political, climate, and regulatory. Without all of these, we cannot become resilient in whichever crops we tend to want to add value. Second is being inclusive. When we say inclusive, we always talk about women empowerment, the marginalized farmer, but here the inclusiveness should be so that each of us in the supply chain stay relevant. So we have to have an end-to-end idea of the supply chain from the producer to the consumer to understand whether we stay relevant in what we want to do. And the last one is being service oriented. Again, then there the focus goes completely towards the consumer. No, to be service oriented, we have to think about being planet centric. Without being of service to the supplier, the producer, the processor, and the consumer, and everything in between, we cannot advance. Gone are the days when we want to be doing comparisons. USA is doing so much, India is only so much. What, as a country, as a nation, that India now has to focus on is pure advancement. Let's not look at where others are. Let's look at where we are, find the ways and means to advance what we do. So if you really look at it, especially from a spices point of view, this is something that is constantly spoken in all of the spice forums. We are globally the largest producer, the largest exporter, the largest consumer, and so on. So clearly, there is a definite advantage India in spices with varieties. We have over 55 varieties of herbs and spices. Now, to make that an advantage to India, we also have to look at how we differentiate ourselves. There is GI tagged spices. There are any number of farmers doing organic. There is also the other thing called PGS, which is participatory guarantee system of working with spices or any commodity. Second is about the beautiful blends we have. We have, for each region that we have spice blends and various combinations. Now, with so much of the world moving to plant-based diet, how is it that we can actually promote the spice combinations, the spice blends, as an alternate or a slightly better version of salt and sugar and other additives that enhance taste? The other one is that of medicinal. Pandemic showed that people were drinking hordes of turmeric tea and so on. But does India have authentic research to prove all this? It's not enough for us to actually mouth that, oh, all of this is medicinal. So we need to prove and collate and have a compendium to show that we have authentic research to prove all this. Last but not the least, with so much ag tech and entrepreneurs coming into the space in agriculture, India can definitely have the advantage of being one of the most planet-centric farming community. So with all of this, we are at an advantage. So what this calls for is research, information, enabling policies, last but not the least, strict compliance. There is research, ample research, both in terms of knowledge base, as well as hearing from all of the speeches earlier in terms of processing and how to better utilize it. But as one of the speakers said, it remains within that research center. So how do we pass on this information, which is the second point, to the actual users? What are the fora available for us to utilize this? And of course, with all of this information and availability of research, we need enabling policies. We cannot have everything being solely restricted and being policed by the government. We need enabling policies where we take upon ourselves the ownership and the responsibility to see that things work well. And if at all we fail in doing that in regulatory compliance, take strict actions. So without these, we cannot have any scope for value addition. So now coming to a small example of how we could do more per crop. I'm focusing more on the farm, because without farmers and the value addition for them, we do not have the raw material to work with. So the first place should be in terms of adding value to the farmers and how they do it. So the first thought that comes is about upcycling. So for all of this, we need market information. If you look at how people enjoy cuisines, so we talk about fennel as fennel seeds, saumph, we use it in cooking and so on. But then there are several ways we can upcycle it. The fennel ferns give a fantastic flavor out. So instead of only coriander or cilantro in all our topical applications, is it possible to engage with the farmer so that the use of fennel ferns can be encouraged? The second part is the fennel bulb, as we call it. There's a lot of culinary use to the fennel bulb. So what happens is the farmer gets money not only for the fennel seeds, but the farmer gets for his whole plant, and then he will tend to take care of that plant. So this is one idea. Similarly, we could find ideas for a lot of the spice for the material that we have in our country. The second one is looking at the usage of fresh. So let's look at how we are able to do fresh. There are IQF, there are new technologies for preserving the freshness and encouraging people to use all of these. We can make sauces with it and so on. Mono components and blends. Now, that's another one. We have tea. Can we use some of these spices, or can some of the sectors work together to bring out beautiful products? We have spiced teas as an example, but tea industry works separately, the spice industry works separately, and the beverage industry works separately. Can these sectors come together to help us add value and as a result become pioneers in all of this? Last but not the least, we talk about Ayurveda, the botanicals, the roots, all of that that is available. Again, let's make use of this. If we can make a very bold statement, India probably would be the only country with access to these many different varieties of crops. And because we are engaged in farming, we can truly become a global partner to many companies and countries, because we could cultivate to different regulatory requirements. So this would be one way to get the farmer income up. So they get more per crop instead of waiting for a product to be dried and then tested and so on. Each part of the plant also can be used for their benefit and increased income. Now, for this, definitely we need to have shared value partnerships. Now, as we know, we are all looking for improved profitability, from the farm to the corporates to the boardrooms, and even consumer for that matter, looking for a good value proposition. Now, given that, how do we do it? One is use of AI, and here I'm using the term AI loosely. I mean actionable insights. With so much of research available in the country, so much of knowledge available in the country, why are we not bringing it all together and using it as actionable insight and use it for information seeking, so that we don't, when someone comes to us with a question, please tell me, we have the information readily available. Can a private portal or a government portal, whichever, can they store all this, so that whether it is the farmer, whether it is the processor, the producer, the retailer, we all have the same set of information. The second one is to increase the business per se. Here we have to learn to engage. Guidance seeking is something we are not good at that. We believe we know it all. So it would be good for us to start seeking guidance with agencies. There are several agencies. Again, these are all in silos, asking them to advise us and not make simple statements. It has to be backed by science, which means we are asking, to advise us. So there was a presentation on cryogenic milling. Granted that cryogenic milling has been there since 1999. It is expensive, but it protects the many of the components of the spices, for example, that he spoke about. But then let somebody be there to advise me. When I say me, it is not me in particular, but the industry, about the benefits. And also we always speak about the benefits. What are the negatives? So guidance requires both the pluses and the minuses, so that there is engagement and increased business. And last is about value distribution. Value has to be distributed across the chain. It cannot rest with either only the consumer and the retailer, or the processor, or only the supplier or the producer. So it has to be across, and we need to find out what kind of percentage are we looking for in the food business. So if, let's say, turmeric powder costs 100 rupees, how much should be legitimately and in a certain manner be made available to the farmer who cultivates it, so that he is encouraged to follow the good principles of cultivation, and so on. So value distribution, and ethically, how much should be part of each, what shall I say, stakeholders share in it. There is no harm in wanting a higher value distribution, provided you have a better value proposition. So based on that, let's make recommendations, collect feedback. Feedback is also about not just from people around us, but from the global. Many a time, Indian spices especially are bad-mouthed. There is a problem elsewhere. There was sesame from Egypt or Syria tested for ETO. Now every Indian spice is being pulled up. So there is all of these. So we have to give and receive feedback, and then correct ourselves if we are in the wrong. So this shared value partnership again has to be across the value chain from the farmer, so that the farmer gets more per crop that he cultivates. And this is my last slide. So with all of this, just by focusing especially on one side, what is the millennial looking at? Jimon mentioned about the Instagram thing. It is both a blessing and a curse, because if there is something wrong, immediately it gets published all over the world. But then what we do right also can go around, so that countries come to India for their sustainable crop. And by that, from the fresh to the dry, the farmer can add value. So this is my submission. Thank you for this opportunity.